We're not in illusion today. We're in truth today. So the last time we left off with this Kemetic study, we were talking about ab, which is the heart. Hey, Kay, how you doing? Okay. And we were talking about this idea that it is our consciousness, our conscience that judges us. We don't need to be worried about what other people think about us. We need to worry about what we think about ourselves. And when I say worry, I don't mean worry. Be concerned. Concern yourself with knowing yourself to the point that you don't fear judgment, because it is you that is really judging you. Nothing outside of you is judging you. It's the inner judgment being reflected on the outside that's bothering you. Again, it's the inner judgment reflected on the outside that's bothering you. That's what's bothering you. So you could say, oh, it's people, they judge me, they don't get me. No, because people are going to judge you all throughout life. This is part of life. And you're judging also, and you should. But it's that inner judgment that will take you downhill and take you low, and you'll be thinking it's the people outside of you. It's not. It's the people, the person, the people themselves inside. Okay, so we touched upon that, and I want to continue reading there. The living of truth and righteousness, which is ma'at, which is symbolized by a feather, should be done while still alive. After death, if the heart is light, it is lighter than ma'at, and the owner is fit for eternal life. However, if the heart is heavy with anger, fear, ignorance, egoism, or if it is too elated or full of desires for worldly pleasures, then it will be heavier than ma'at, heavier than the feather. It will not be fit for eternal life yet. So this is not the same as eternal damnation. It's not fit yet. This heart did not practice the virtues enough. Okay, we're talking about Kemetic spirituality. So there's no damnation here. There's continual evolution, right? The AB, or the conscience, can be an excellent guide or an inner oracle for those who wish to live a life of truth. If you don't want to live a life of truth, and you want to do what you want to do and call it what you want to call it, then your conscience is not going to be an excellent guide, because it's going to be telling you that you shouldn't be doing something, and you're going to be saying, why? Those who put aside their pride and egoism can use the higher intelligence within them to find the truth that does not come through thinking. Right now, we're talking about gnosis. You are able to come to truth without thinking, but you're going to have to learn how to still those mental modifications that we talked about the other day, the attachments. I just want this. I just need that. I just want them. I just need that. You're going to have to clear the attachments, right? Keep the desire, clear the attachments in order to hear your inner oracle, because those attachments will drown it out, and you'll find yourself making the same decisions over and over and over again. Okay? The ab, which is your higher subconscious mind, may be accessed by quieting the thoughts and then asking a question, followed by silence once again. We're talking about how to access truth when we don't know truth. So maybe you don't have a coach nearby. Maybe you don't have a therapist, a friend, a guide. Then it's giving you a structure to access your inner knowing. So quiet the thoughts. That's the first thing. Some people can't get past this part. They try to quiet the thoughts, more thoughts come. Quiet the thoughts, more thoughts come. That's why practice is necessary. You have to engage in a practice of focus before you even get to meditate. What some people are calling meditation is sitting still. And maybe that's a type of meditation, but that's not the type of meditation that's ultimately going to reveal truth to you. You're going to have to learn in that process how to still your thoughts. What thoughts? The attachments, the interpretations. You're going to have to learn how to let those go. Deep inhale, exhale. So one way to do this is you can find a point to focus on. Find a point in the room, focus only on that. See what is to be seen, and only that. When your mind veers away, you bring it back to that. You can find a point of focus. You can focus on your breath. Follow your breath in your nostrils, down your throat, into your lungs, and back out. Let that be the focal point, because you got to give your mind something to do when it is used to not settling down. So again, quiet the thoughts. Once you do that, so some people seek answers without quieting the thoughts. The mind is running 100 miles per hour and they still trying to find truth in it. And they are just like Speedy Gonzalez. Y'all remember Speedy Gonzalez? Back and forth, right? And they don't really even know what's true because they can't arrive at a point of stillness to feel it inside. When you are like that, that is no condemnation. You may need someone on the outside to help you. You may need someone to say, hey, look at this or look at that, or here's this or here's that. But if someone is not around, you're going to have to become masterful at stilling the thoughts, not stopping them, but focusing them on something else. Maybe you take a book and sit it right in front of you and you're going to only look at the book, right? Body focus is a big help, right? So once you still the thoughts, you ask the question, and then you go back to stillness again. The answer will come seemingly out of nowhere when the mind is clear. Now, sometimes you sit there and the answer didn't come, maybe because the mind couldn't still. And maybe your mind is still, but the energy is still circulating in your system. Get some help. Reach out to someone. Okay? Reach out to someone. Or continue to live your life. The answer will come. It will. But if you're attached to a particular outcome, if you're attached to a particular person, every sign you get is going to point to the attachment. And you're going to be like, see, I knew it. I knew it. And then you get to the attachment and you're just like, oh, I thought it was this. And it's not. Why? Because you begin to skew signs to fit the attachment. That's why you got to release the attachment. Still hold the desire, release the attachment. The attachment feels like the intensity. Oh, I want this, I must have it. It's the craving. The attachment is the intensity. The desire is an idea. I want that. When you keep dwelling on the idea, yes, that's good. You look at it and you see that it's good. And you keep looking and you keep looking, but you don't have it in manifestation yet. You don't understand manifestation processes, something like that. Then you begin to move into lack. And that's where the attachment comes in. The attachment is, I don't have this, but I want it. And this is what's going to fulfill me. So I'm going to go in that direction. You got to release the attachment. This is what it's saying. The mind, here, listen to this. Tap the screen and listen. The mind is not the soul. The mind is not the soul. One more time. The mind is not the soul. The mind is limited. It's subject to ignorance, primarily ignorance about the Ba, your higher self. Those who devote themselves to a religion of the mind, which indulge in sensory pleasures, or those that think themselves to be exalted due to their intellectual prowess, thinking that their mental thoughts and body are all there is to life, will undergo a death of the illusory ego at the time when the physical death comes. So, in other words, if you live your life feeling like, I know this, I know. You place primary emphasis on what you know, but you're not becoming it. You're not living it out. And not only do you place the emphasis on what you know, it causes you to have an air of superiority, but you're not practicing it. However, you are in the illusion of, I have already arrived. I know this. It causes you not to listen. It causes you to resist. It causes you to deflect, deny, defend. All of that, if you continue in that along with your attachments, then your ego will go away once you transition. Don't worry, it will go away. It just will go away, not in this life. Okay. On the other hand, they who use the mind as a tool to develop Higher aspects, intuitive aspects of it will transcend the mind. We want to become greater than the mind. We don't want to just dwell and be what's in our mind, going to and fro with whatever the mind is saying. The mind will attach to this and go that way. And then the mind will look back and say, I should never left. And it'll go back there. And then it'll look over there and be like, oh, but that's better, and go over there. And then look back over there and say, oh, I got it wrong. Let me go back and fix this. Your mind will go, what if I would have done this different? Let me go back and try. Oh, wait, I don't want that anymore. I want this over there. That looks better. Your mind will take you round and round and round. Okay. Like a herd of horses just running without any focus. That's what the mind will do. So, those who use the mind as a tool, right? You get information, you get to understand your thoughts. My first book, Self Intimacy, is about this, right? It's about getting to know your mind and creating mastery over your mind so you can transcend it and live from a different space, okay? These people will not have the ego death because they will continue in their immortality after. Okay, so once you evolve to the level that you need to evolve, whatever your life path is, there's no need to carry this forward. Okay, now can we control how many times we have to reincarnate in order to do this? I don't think so. But what we can do is evolve as the lessons come rather than spend time deflecting, spend time resisting and defending and vouching for attachments that don't serve us. We can do that, right? Developing the power of intuition is essential on the spiritual path. This is the only way to become one with the God self. Intuition is not a byproduct of what you know. It's not a byproduct of what you have learned in the past. It's not the application of wisdom so you don't have to face this again. That's wisdom. Your intuition is in your your higher self. Before you come here and experience anything on this earth plane, before you do anything, before you feel you've messed up or succeeded, there is a higher self that is encoded with all the information, all the people you need to meet, all the lessons you will encounter, all of the things on the path that will bring you forward. Your higher self has all of that already. You didn't need to experience anything to have intuition. But when you begin to confuse your intuition with what you have experienced, then you run into a problem. You begin to not know what's your intuition. You begin to stop trusting it. Let me give you an example. So you may think that your intuition, now remember, I just told you that your higher self is encoded with all the lessons you need on this journey. Okay. So let's say you don't know that. And you think that your intuition is leading you into positive manifestations where everything is the land of milk and honey and everything is going to be fine. Then when you follow your intuition, you'll say, my intuition is leading me. You will follow it. You will get there. Your mind will kick in and then you will start fighting. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. How did I get here? I didn't sign up for this. That's how the mind will come on top of where the intuition led you and start causing you to doubt. Now you're moving farther and farther away from intuition. Then you say to yourself, I will never do this again. Now your intuition did lead you there. It's just not turning out the way that you want. You're not gleaning the lessons. So then you form a rule. I will never do that again. Not only did you doubt your intuition, not only did you misunderstand your intuition, you doubted it. And now you're forming a rule against it. I will never do that again. Now what? Now you have a rule that you begin to follow, which is not your intuition. It's your conditioning. Can you see that? Developing the power of intuition is essential on your spiritual path. Did that make sense? Your intuition is not your suspicion. Your intuition is not what your mind is telling you. It's something far deeper, right? But if you don't know how to still the mind and quiet it, that sense of knowing can't come forward. You're going to go back and forth. You're going to make a decision and then you're going to go back and make another decision and go back. But I believe this journey is leading us to more and more intuitive guidance. It's not your mind, it's not your attachments. Your intuition is not even your desire. Your intuition will tell you how to access that desire. Let's continue. Intuition is perfection, while the thinking mind is related to egotistical vision of oneself. Okay. Your mind is self centered. Every person's mind is self centered. Even when you're thinking about someone else, it's still self centric because you're looking from your own point of view. You're assessing it from your own ideas. You are coming up with ideas from your own conditioning, your own experience. That is still self centric. I'm not saying it's selfish the way that people talk about it, but you got to understand we all are looking from our own lens. That's the only lens we have until we become evolved, and then we can start looking from different perspectives. This is why we need the mirror. It causes us to look at ourselves from different perspectives. If you don't know that, you're going to be blaming others and finger pointing and trotting off the edge of a cliff, not really understanding that this is all about self. Thank you, Hawk. Individuals are mortals and mortals transition. However, intuition is the spirit, which is eternal and immortal. So let me ask you a question. Do you want to be following your mind, or do you want to be following your intuition? Do you want to chase after your attachments because they feel good and feel better than where you are? Or do you want to focus on the inner knowing? It just depends on where you want to go. It depends on what path you want to take. You know, there's that scripture, choose ye this day. And we do get to choose, right? And again, there's no condemnation to your choice. Right now, I'm asking you what you really want, because what you really want is shown forward in the decisions that you make when you learn. Are you going to operate in wisdom, or are you going to backtrack to the time where you didn't have wisdom? The goal is to develop our intuitional capability and to leave the ego mind behind. We must train through wisdom, developing the higher mind or your intellect. You still must develop your intellect. Read new ideas, place yourself in contact with new ideas. If you stay in the same circle with the same ideas, then you're going to be limited. But the more you expand, the more godlike you become, right? The thing is, though, that's the more thoughts you take up into the mind. So with your intellectual expansion, you need to be deepening spiritually as well. Because if you get too much intellect, you will fool yourself into thinking you have arrived and you'll still be making the same decisions. But if you deepen in your intuition and your spiritual capacity, as well as ascend in your intellectual capacity, guess what's happening? You're broadening, you're widening, you're expanding. That's what this journey is about. This journey is not about self-soothing. Ashe. Okay. So the AB and the Ba. Let's look at the relationship between the Ab and the Ba. The Ab is your conscience. Okay. Your Ba is your higher self. If you just popped in, we've been learning about the 9 parts of the self. I used to do a teaching of the 4 parts of the self. I love that too. It's pretty practical. But what I want to do is infuse this Kemetic wisdom into it. So I love this 9 parts. But one day I'm going to come back and talk about the 4 parts too, because it's essential as well. It's interesting to note, thank you, Hawk, that AB spelled backwards is BA. Ab spelled backwards is Ba. These 2 words, however, are more integrally related than just their spelling. Our ignorance causes us to be fearful to the point that we perform negative deeds, which we later regret after listening to our conscience. In order for us to connect with Ba, our higher self, we must purify AB, the conscience. We must strive to grow in peace and purity of heart by listening to the voice of the soul. Let's talk about that. Because some spiritual people are retaining contracted perspectives and thinking that they're going to hear their intuition properly. No, fear is going to be the result. You're going to be fearing your own thought processes in the form of other people. It's akin to what I was talking about where the judgment is concerned. When you ascend spiritually, when you deepen spiritually, you must strive. The work is growing in peace and purity. The work no longer becomes controlling triggers. The work no longer becomes shunning people, don't disturb my peace. The work becomes purifying your mind. So you fool yourself if you think you can completely grow with these contracted and low vibrational thoughts that you entertain day after day, moment by moment. You must strive to purify that because your conscience and the accessibility and the accuracy of it depends on that. So let's say, for example, you retain a petty nature. And you know, because all of us have said this before, myself included. And then I learned, oh, I could get petty. Now I could be petty. You want to be petty? I could be petty. If you retain that, then that is a program in your ab. So you must purify that pettiness through understanding what belief systems have caused it to be part of your vibrational signature. You must find out what belief systems have caused you to react in this pattern and shift the belief system, because the belief system is a system of thoughts. If your thoughts keep swirling around in your head and activating whenever it wants to, you're not operating in mastery. And it is what it is. Some people maybe don't want mastery. Like, for example, my mom, she jokes, but I know she's serious. She'd be like, yes, I'm still like this. I ain't been delivered yet. She don't want to be delivered from some ways of being. She said it. Let her be the way she want to be. So she gonna get wild. She gonna get crazy. She gonna get spicy because she have the will to do it. And we got to say hashay to that. There's no condemnation. But if you are listening, I love her too, right? Because she really just goes off. She goes off. Listen, we must strive to grow in peace and purity of heart. Purifying the ab. So when you walk away from this teaching thinking, oh, I could still be sarcastic. I could still be petty if I want. I could still be this if I want. You could. You could also purify your ab so that you can become more closely intertwined with your intuition. So that when you're living, you're evolving, right? Many people say they want a soft life. Many people say they want ease, they want flow, but they want to retain turbulence. It's a contradictory way of being. It just is, right? You must purify your ab in peace and purity by listening to the inner voice of the soul. And you cannot hear the inner voice of the soul while sarcasm is activated. You cannot hear the inner voice of the soul while your attachments are activated. You cannot hear the inner voice of the soul while you're harboring resentments and stuff. So you got to purify your own ab. Grow in peace and purity. Grow in peace. Grow in peace. That means increasingly you cultivate peace, you choose peace, and you say no thank you to the other. Grow in peace and purity. Strive to see with the inner eye, the heart. It sees the reality not subject to emotional or personal error. It sees the essence. The intuition then is the most important quality to develop. Do you want to see the essence of a thing? Or do you want to see what your mind tells you about the thing, what you learned about the thing? We have a choice. It is interesting to note that the recent documented experiments atop medical research institutes and hospitals in the United States show that the major cause of heart attacks in modern society is not related to dietary problems, but to heartache. Heartache is caused by feelings of emptiness inside, a lack of meaning in one's life due to a lack of purpose. job dissatisfaction, feelings of unhappiness, feelings of mistrust of others. These are all ego based ailments that are caused by living in a manner that is against one's essence. One is unable to perceive the universality of all people and believes that one is separate from everything and everyone. And many spiritual people, right, including myself, have fallen into this trap of loneliness. Oh, the spiritual walk is lonely. It's a lonely walk. Sometimes you're going to have to learn. And we just turn that into a dreadful experience. But I've also learned that self-isolation is what does that, not the spiritual journey. Not the spiritual journey. One is unable to, I read that part already. One becomes caught up in the idea that it's me against the world. When I hear people with a me against the world, I got this, I'm going to do this. Nobody gets me. I got to do it myself. I've been like this all my life. I've had to, when they start doing that, that's telling me there's a disconnection somewhere, right? There's a disconnection somewhere. Me against the world. You're unable to see the interconnectedness. So you can't experience it. So you think it's because of whatever you think it's because of, but we're seeing what the root of this is. If you have eyes, see. If you have ears, hear. This comes from our identification of ourself with the ego personality and the body, which are mortal and subject to error, instead of with the immortal higher part of ourselves, which is eternal and one with all things. You can tell what part of the self a person dominantly speaks from. Are they speaking from woundology? Are they speaking from trauma? Are they speaking from pain and all of things that they have experienced? Or are they speaking from their higher self while telling you about what they have experienced? That's two different things. Because some people think it means that you can't talk about your experiences if you are on the higher plane. Yes, you can. But your perspective of those experiences reflects what part of self you come from dominantly. Okay. So a person can be very spiritual and still be talking from their ego. The ego sounds powerless. It sounds like all the things that people do and what they never get and they never had and all of these things. That's not speaking from the higher self. The higher self sounds more like, I've been through a lot and I've learned through thinking that other people don't get me and that other people don't this and that or whatever. I've learned that, and they tell you what they've learned, and the learning sounds elevated. It doesn't sound like this. I've learned not to trust nobody but myself. I've learned that you can't depend on people. I've learned that everybody don't think like me. I'm telling you, where they're coming from, where they live from, even if they are a spiritual being, even if they practice spirituality, you can locate what part of the self the person lives from. That's not condemnation, that's wisdom for you and for yourself, because you can listen to yourself. Sometimes people get afraid to talk to me because they don't want me to hear what part of the self they dominate from. They want me only to see the higher or the light part. So they don't want to tell me things, right? But then I have to ask, like, do you want to ascend? Or do you want to just be seen where you are and held like that? That's fine too. I don't think we should be afraid of where we are. I don't think we should be ashamed of where we are. I don't think we should think about what other people think about what we think about. However, if you want to ascend, if you want to grow, it's going to take you to take a mask off with other people. It's going to take you to recognize where you are versus where you want to be and understand what that gap is like so you can be realistic, right? But if you just decide, oh, I'm not going to tell her that. And I'm telling you, it happens with all people, therapists, doctors, coaches, spiritual guides. It happens all across the board. People are fearing judgment because they're not steady within themselves, because they're not living from a particular part of themselves. So if that is you and you act that way with people, it's time for you to become more firmly grounded in yourself. Right. And if you notice that with people, don't be in a hurry to make them comfortable, because why make them comfortable in a place that is holding them down in evolution? I don't want you to be comfortable. This book doesn't want you to be comfortable. It's not pulling any punches. Why? Because we're talking about enlightenment. The book is called Philosophy of Enlightenment, not philosophy of self-comfort. Okay, let's continue. This comes from the me against the world, comes from our identification with ourself, with the ego, mind, personality, and the body, which are mortal and subject to error, instead of the higher part of yourself. So you want to hide that you don't come from the higher part of yourself, or you want to see that reflection. Remember, today is about reflection. You want to look in the mirror and only see what you want to see. So you squint your eyes so you can't see the details that clear and you go, I'm good. Or you want to look with your full awareness, like, ooh, which one? I want to look at the whole thing. Because why am I putting in this work if I only want to see a fractal of what I need to shift? I want to see the grand scheme of things, right? The one they counted out. Hey, how you doing? The sacred task. It doesn't happen through comfortability. It doesn't. It doesn't. And when I say that, I don't mean it has to happen through pain either. It could happen just by this teaching. It can happen by just a realization. It can happen by just you noticing like some contraction within yourself, right? It doesn't have to come through pain, but it's definitely not going to be comfortable, especially if you are attached to a certain way of seeing yourself. If you are attached to seeing yourself as spiritual, hey, Emmy, and you only want people to see that spiritual and you're attached to it, when somebody sees beyond that, you're going to flex up, contract up, and protect. No, it's you. You dug too deep. You getting them to my personal, whatever you want to say. Right? Most human beings, the sacred task, most human beings identify with their ego personality. Most. This is what the book is saying, which is the Kemetic and the Ren. So let's look at the Kemetic and the Ren, because it's saying that most humans identify with the Kemetic and the Ren. So the Kemetic is the shadow associated with the higher self from which it receives nourishment. It has the power of locomotion and omnipresence. A lot of people identify heavily with their shadow. That's the Kemetic. Here's the Ren. The Ren is the name, the essential attribute to the personification of a being. The name is sometimes found encircled by a rope of light called a cartouche, which is associated with the shin, which is the top part of the Ankh symbol. Y'all know the Ankh symbol, which has the oval and then the cross at the bottom? The shin is the top part of the Ankh symbol. The cartouche represents the rope of life or life force harnessed into the form of a circle. It is the most impregnable structure to protect one's name against attack. The name of the author is enclosed in the cartouche on the first page of the book. So let's see the first page of the book. Where do we see it? Oh, on the first page, sorry. And I'm thinking it's talking about this right here, I think. Well, here we go. Here's the Ankh. I don't know where the name is. Let me see. I don't see it. Anyway, let's get back to, if the cartouche is a circle, and this is the beginning of volume 1, then perhaps it can be seen here. The SEMA Institute, the ring, the circle. So anyway, it says that most humans identify with their shadow and their name. The shadow and the name. That's where most people identify. That's why they're going to fuss when you call them something. They're going to fuss when you say they're not something. They're going to hide the shadow. They don't want you to see. They get upset and offended. This is where most people live from. It's saying, hey, B-side. The task is to explore and consciously discover the other 7 parts. You have 9 parts of the self that we're talking about here. It's saying that most people live from 2, the shadow and the Ren, the name. But the task is to discover the other 7 parts. So think about relationships. If most people deal in those 2, the shadow and the name, then that's how they relate to others, the shadow and the name. But the task of deepening within to self is to learn the other 7 parts. So do you think it's important for you to learn the other 7 parts, the other person learn their 7 parts, and then you get to know the 7 parts together? You think that's important? Or do you think we should be relating on the level of the shadow and the name? How I look, what you call me, my labels, what I am, also what I've been through. Do you think we should primarily interact, get to know self and others on those 2 levels? Or do you think it needs to be a lot deeper from what I just read? Just tell me what you think. I'm going to wait deeper. It's simple, right? So all of it is important. So when you want a deep connection, number 1 with self, but with someone else, are you going to stay on the superficial layers? What's your name? Where you been through? What you been through? Where you from? What's your favorite this? And start naming. And then we name the relationship. You're my lover. You're my such and such. You're my babe. And then you interact on the shadow level because it's saying most people dwell here. You interact with one another's offenses, defenses, things they have experienced and such. There's a whole 7 other parts to the human soul. And we wonder why the depth of our experiences fail us. Can you see? Tap the screen. Even before transition, we must have the other 7 of those remembered, and permanently integrated. We're not talking about just knowledge here. You must have the 7 parts remembered, coming back into your awareness and integrated, lived from. So if this depth is required of self, then connecting with others who have this depth and together sharing the depth, it makes sense to me. But it said that most people dwell on the level of 2 parts of self. And you wonder why most people don't feel known. You wonder why people can't understand. You wonder because there's no depth. The depth is only in defending the ego. Long as you see my ego the way I want you to see it, I'm fine with you. Also, we don't learn how to trust others. So as soon as something goes haywire, you begin to accuse the heart of the person, and you don't know your own heart, and they accuse your heart. Now we go back and forth. You this, and you wanted to, and you did this on purpose, and you did that, and blah, blah, blah. And it goes on, and there's no depth. It's just playing around on the surface. Eventually, at some point, you will begin to want more for yourself, and it's going to begin by discovering your 7 parts. And then learning how to get to know others. See, on our spiritual journey, because what we have been exposed to is what is being called shadow work and also inner child work, we think that we've gone deep. And so then when you get with others, you try to go just that far deep with them, but there's more. Okay. We must have these other 7 parts remembered and integrated, hey Sammy, into one, so that at the time we leave the earth and the body and the name, we're leaving the shadow and the name behind. Yet most people live by the shadow and the name. That's what we're leaving behind. And you're talking about you don't want to reincarnate no more times. Okay. Once we leave the body and the name behind, we are ready to fly into our spiritual body and join Asar, our divine self, God, and merge with the ultimate reality, which we not only come from, but who is our innermost essence. You have a divine self within you, and it's not in your shadow. And it does not consist of what you've been through and what you're healing from. It does not consist of your name, what people call you, and what you want to be seen as. Thank you. It's not there. And if you accept these teachings, then the next question is, well, how can I know it? Well, we just gave you one strategy here to go a little deeper. Imagine when we're getting to know one another. It is so important. Imagine you're trying to get to know someone, but you're so consumed by, oh, I just love you. Oh, I just love you. Oh, I just want to be with you. Oh, I just want to see you. Oh, oh, oh. But then when we see one another, it's either consumed by the task that we're doing, it's either consumed by the physical way we're intertwining, or it's consumed by us fantasizing about the future when there's a whole 7 parts of the self, hey, Kim, that we don't even know of. Do you want to know a soul or you want to know a shadow and a name? Which one? I'm asking a question. Because most people say they want to know a soul and they talk about connecting at the soul, but they don't live beyond the shadow and the name. I read this out the book. Because some people could say, oh, that's Veronica's teachings. Veronica do this. This is a whole Kemetic yoga book, okay? Let's continue. Let's continue. Our individual soul joins the supreme soul. Thus, we join God. We can live that in this life also. We are God, as are all people and objects in the seen and unseen. It's our sacred task to know this to be true and interact with people who know this to be true. Do you know this to be true? With your mind, you may say, yes, I know I'm God, but you tell disempowering stories. You don't work through them, right? We all process through disempowering stories, what someone else did to us. We all do that. That's a process. But some people carry that story down the line. It does not alchemize. It doesn't become power. It doesn't become strength. It stays something that they're trying to avoid or scared of. We can join the seen and the unseen in this realm. We don't have to wait until we transition. But it's not going to come by staying on the level of the shadow and the name, the ego, right? The knowledge, the mind, and interacting with one another on that level. It's not going to come from there. We could talk about 10,000 past lives. But in this life, if the consciousness is not expanded, what does that mean? We could have traveled 10,000 years together and still unenlightened together. So I don't really get that impressed by, oh, we were in a past life together. What are we doing in this life together to enhance our connection? How does this human consisting of 9 parts of the self interact together? Is it an enlightened interaction or is it a low vibration interaction? And where do we need to come up from that? And can we? It is our sacred task. It's saying your sacred task is to know that you are God. The fact that you are God is true, not intellectually. That comes through growing in peace and purity, purifying your mind, empowering yourself, not on the egoic level. I know I can manifest because I'm a manifester, not on that level. Because to be honest, God is not even concerned about manifesting a physical thing. God is not. Your mind is. Your attachments and your desires associating with this human body, are wanting that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But God is not being God saying, I want anything, because God is everything and already has everything and already is everything. So if you know you're God, you're not coming from limitation, but you understand that this human existence is limited, and you're discovering how to become more of God in the body. And God is not focusing and hyperfixating on things. God is in the flow. What is impeding your flow? Where's your energy going? What is directing it in that direction? What needs to shift? It says, this may be done through the practice of virtues and meditation. And there's the practice again, the practice of purifying the mind. When I talk to people and I listen to how they talk versus what they're saying, sometimes there's consistency and sometimes there's contrast. And you can feel the contrast because a lot of people have words. A lot of people could read this book and voice it. A lot of people can teach what's here. All you have to do is have an intellect. But do you live from it? Does it guide your choices? When you reflect, do you try your reflections by it? Do you transcend your mind or vouch for it and defend it? Do you live from your shadow or do you transmute it? Do you make willing choices from the shadow in the mind and the ego? Or do you reflect and make intentional choices? This right here guides a whole lifestyle, not just knowledge. It's in every word you speak. It's in every phrase. It's in every interpretation. If the ka part of our spirit identifies itself with the physical body and its erroneous subconscious ideas about reality, it will not operate correctly in the spiritual realm. You want to operate in the spiritual realm, you can't from your ka. Do you remember what your ka is? Your ka is your ego. If you live from your ego, you're not going to operate correctly in the spiritual realm because your ka is not of the spiritual realm. It's of this realm of the body, and it's erroneous and it's programmed and it's conditioned. And if you have not programmed it and conditioned it for truth, then the erroneous ways of thinking are going to guide you. So listen, it says, if you identify with the ka part of yourself, which is the physical body and erroneous subconscious ideas about reality, it will not operate correctly in the spiritual realm. Let's talk about subconscious. Sub means beneath. Consciousness is aware. If something is operating beneath your consciousness, you don't know it's there. However, you are still operating from it. And the more you resist your reflection, the more you say, I don't want to know my subconscious. The more you defend your ego, the more you say, I don't want to know my subconscious. The more you flex against what someone is saying instead of reflecting in truth, you're saying, I don't want to know my subconscious. But right here, it's saying that the subconscious has erroneous ideas about reality. So what do you think? You need to be operating in the patterns of your subconscious or reprogramming it? Which one? Do you need to be pursuing peace and purity or vouching for your name and your shadow? Standing up in your ego, getting upset and bothered or moving according? Which one do you need? Through wisdom, inner experience, and a meditative, peaceful mind. A what kind of mind? A what kind of mind? So if you want to know if a person really is spiritually where they say they are, if you want to know if you really are spiritual as you say you are, if you want to understand your placement in spirituality, look at your mind. Is it a peaceful one? Is the person in a peaceful state of mind? I'm not talking about temporary fluctuations. We all have temporary fluctuations, but do they make their way back to peace and truth? Or do they stay in the fluctuation, and do they carry it for years to come? Does it affect what they're doing, how they're seeing, how they're talking, how they treat you, how they treat themselves? A mind who is not peace is not operating properly in the spiritual realm. And again, I'm not talking about fluctuations. We all have fluctuations. Because if we're going to evolve, ideas must clash. So temporarily, we may not be in peace. But when the ideas circulate and come back around and they remember according to truth, the result is peace and ease. Through wisdom, inner experience, meditative and peaceful mind, the Ka and the other bodies may be experienced, developed, and integrated. So, on one hand, it's saying that a peaceful mind, through wisdom and a peaceful mind, the Ka and your other bodies may be experienced, developed, and integrated. Without, let's take the opposite, without wisdom, inner experience, meditation, and a peaceful mind, the Ka and the other bodies may not be experienced, developed, and integrated. In other words, you can't even reach the depth because you don't have the vibration to do it, no matter how much spiritual knowledge, right? So what do we have to do? We have to purify our mind. And it's a daily walk. It's a daily approach to living and people. And you begin to value yourself so much that the thoughts that are contrary to peace, you don't act by them. You want to get to know them and you want to do something with them, alchemize them. You don't want to keep them in your system. Eventually, you begin to stop prioritizing behavior over inner enlightenment. What does that look like? Oh, well, I didn't punch him that time, but you still sit in the swirling around of punching them is there. So it's not just not punching, it's also purifying the mind to where you don't even go there. You might say, I wanted to tell him something, but I didn't tell him. I let him just talk. I didn't say that to them. That's what I thought on the inside. Well, this is about purifying the thoughts. It doesn't say purify behavior. It says purify your thoughts so your behavior can flow, so you can operate properly in the spiritual realm. If you are not doing these things, you are not operating properly, it says. All right. If you want to experience the rest of yourself, the parts of yourself, the depth of yourself, hold on. Then you must practice, right? And so a word that I put on this recently, which is very similar, is tantric. A tantric lifestyle is an approach to living. It's an approach to thinking. It's an approach to speaking. It's an approach to behaving. It's an approach to connecting that is beyond the shadow and the name. It's a depth of experience of life through the journey of all the parts of the selves being remembered and integrated in such a way that you create the reality, the heaven experience, because it's in you. And you're not carrying around all this stuff, these attachments and vouching and connecting through it. You're actually living together and growing and ascending. You're not dipping back and coming forward, dipping back and coming forward. There's a steady presence at every moment. And even when you're dipping back, you have an awareness to say, hey, this is not present. This is old mindsets. This is old ideas. When you talk to people, you're not steeped in how they offended you and what they said, but rather you can hear because you hear yourself. Okay, so I'm going to place this video on YouTube so you can look at it and review it. There are some suggestions, Roz, inside this teaching, inside this book to assist The sacred task is to explore and discover your other seven selves beyond the shadow and the name. It's a sacred task. What's more sacred than knowing yourself? A lot of people call knowing others sacred. It's sacred. It's a sacred experience, but they don't know themselves. So why is self not the first sacred task or the first sacred journey? And now that you know there's more to your journey, are you up for it? Or do you want to stay where you feel comfortable? I feel comfortable in what I've been working on the last few years, and I've been doing this, and I know this. And do you want that or you want more? Which one? Give an answer if you want to, you know. And if you don't want more because you need to pit stop, that is your journey. You can. But at least you know there's more. And at least you know what the sacred task is. But how can you hear the sacred task and turn from it? I don't know that experientially. Because once I understand there's more, then I want to understand what else is in me, what else is of me, what else. I want to teach from the Indian yoga book also, which describes the different sheets of the self, which is a layer, which is very similar to what we're reading. I like to read from different postures and perspectives, you know, so we can reach different parts of the mind, the body, and the soul. And so I want to stop right here and say yoga is not the physical postures. That's part of it, but you could do yoga without that. You don't need physical postures to be enlightened. You need these things that we've been talking about to be enlightened. The postures aid in this work of the self. So some people say, I practice yoga because I get on the mat and I do postures, asanas, like downward dog and child's pose and things like that. But this is yoga, and the postures or asanas support this. It's on the mat where you learn to plug into timelessness. It's on the mat where you learn that what you know is of no avail in that moment, in that posture. It doesn't even matter. The mat teaches you steadiness. The mat teaches you mind mastery, right? And then we master the body through it as well. But we need all of it on this journey, okay? Because if you're in your body and your body is feeling stuck and tight, we may not be able to do a handstand, but we can sit and do a cat and cow, release some energy, release the fascia. We might not be able to play softball and swing a bat, right? But we could sit down and do neck circles, right? So this is a limitless opportunity to evolve. The reason I started teaching about this is because not only is it important to know self, in knowing self, you can know others. When you only know the kabit and the rin, then you have to stay there with people. And then you have this whole other part, 7 parts of the self that cannot be known by anyone. So even if you got everything you wanted in your relationship, you would still be living on the surface of yourself. So this is not healing work. We're not healing to get over pain. We're not healing so we can be with someone. We're knowing self so that we can operate properly in the spiritual realm. Ashe, type Ashe if this teaching was good for you and to you. If you're new here, welcome. You can find me on my website at veronicamarie.com. I have a growing digital library there, some practical readings to help you on your journey of self. None of them are Kemetic yoga oriented. They come from a more psychological and spiritual view. I have another one coming out that is esoteric shadow work where we infuse hermetic principles. That's coming. So Ashe. These teachings are good. They're food for the soul. We need them to evolve. Ashe. All right, y'all. Peace. Have a beautiful creation. Remember your reflection all day today. And that's it. Bye, y'all.